Okay, we're continuing with Chapter 5, Correcting Visual Dyslexia in the Classroom. The book is Dyslexia in the Classroom by Dale R. Jordan. We left off on page 78. This, I believe, is part 11. Traditionally, cursive writing style has been postponed until grade 3 on the assumption that primary children need to learn the gross motor skills of acceptable manuscript print before advancing to the more complicated motor patterns of cursive style. This assumption has never been effectively supported by research evidence. On the contrary, children who begin handwriting with cursive style seldom manifest disabling dysgraphic tendencies in later writing activities. Largely because of the consistent flowing motor patterns established through cursive writing, alphabetic sequence is quickly established when cursive style is introduced. The quickest remediation of reversal and rotation tendencies in writing is quite simple. This is important if you're having problems with dysgraphia. The teacher writes a clearly legible line of alphabetic letters, all connected in cursive style as if she were spelling one long word. Then the child practices tracing over the written model as the teacher guides his or her wrist to establish proper hand movements. Over a period of a few weeks, this kind of practice pays off generously. The dyslexic child becomes increasingly self-confident at writing. His perception of alphabetic sequence quickly develops, and he becomes aware of the relative positions of letters within the sequence. By having a dependable model as a guide, visual dyslexics find great security. Soon they are ready to progress to copying the teacher's handwriting directly beneath her written model. In a few days or weeks, the children can write their own cursive sequence with only occasional reference to a model. For dysgraphic children, described in Chapter 4, the process of remediation is slow and frustrating. Cursive writing style is, however, the most directly feasible avenue to establishing automatic knowledge of alphabetic sequence. Comprehending instructions. Faulty comprehension of time and alphabetic sequence is largely a personal problem involving the dyslexic learner with private failure in specific classroom assignments. The inability to comprehend instructions widens the area of conflict to include classmates and family members. When dyslexics fail to observe the teacher's intentions regarding assigned activities, the whole group is ultimately involved in the disrupted classroom atmosphere. Helping children attend to sequential steps in carrying out classroom expectations is actually rather simple. Instead of forcing children to depend upon memory, the teacher must provide a simple encoded outline of her expectations. If the students can read, this is accomplished by listing sequential steps on a chart or on the chalkboard. This technique is especially suitable for routine work, such as classroom chores or daily work schedules, which remain fairly constant from day to day. When a clear instructional sequence is provided in the child's text or workbooks, the teacher has a ready-made visual aid in teaching how to follow sequence in interpreting instructions. Otherwise, the teacher must make her own visual models around the room. Kindergarten and primary teachers often solve the problem by creating nonverbal code systems, such as using animal pictures, colored shapes, or other easily decoded symbol sets as cues. Children who lose track easily can refer to the chart to be reminded of what to do next. Older dyslexics have the same basic needs for quick reference. As they listen to a series of directions, dyslexics immediately lose the sequence of expectations. Most teachers are unaware of how complicated their oral instructions actually are. For example, in getting her arithmetic class underway, a teacher in grade 4 will usually make 20 or more discrete statements. Children are adept at tuning in and tuning out, so they seldom attend to all the teacher says. They are expected to filter the teacher's dialogue. A transcript of this kind of situation might read as follows. Now, children, it's time for arithmetic. Put away your social studies books and get out your arithmetic books. Tom, sit down. Yes, Mary. No, you don't need 2 pencils. Now, class, be sure you have your pencils ready. Open your workbooks to today's lesson. Yes, Joe? No, I didn't say get them out. But you know I meant for you to. Now, children, open your books to page 251. What, Sue, what? Yes, you may get a drink for your hiccups. Now, on page 251, we are ready to review short division. This steady flow of dialogue is supplemented by paralanguage, the unspoken gestures, facial expressions, variations of tone, and a myriad of other ingredients of group communication. Most children edit the running dialogue, tuning in only when the teacher or a fellow student utters a relevant statement or command. A student without a handicap would monitor the teacher's dialogue like this. It's time for arithmetic. Put away your social studies books. Get out your arithmetic books. You don't need 2 pencils. Open your workbooks to today's lesson. Open your books to page 251. We are ready to review short division. The dyslexic listener cannot edit successfully. He is unable to determine what the teacher thinks essential because he cannot filter out the extraneous peripheral stimuli bombarding him from all sides. When there is no visual cue to outline the essential tasks for him, the dyslexic is lost. However, if his teacher has provided a tangible model for later reference, the student has a chance. By referring to the following outline on the chalkboard, he can cope with the teacher's expectations. So if she wrote on the board, for today's arithmetic, number 1, have 1 pencil ready. Number 2, open textbook to page 251. Number 3, open workbook to page 97. And number 4, for tomorrow, do the 15 problems on workbook page 97. Many teachers have found it expedient to tape record their daily instructions. This is going back to 77 now, obviously. After the class is at work, those who did not comprehend the instructions can slip on headphones and listen to the assignment in private, repeating the instructions as many times as needed. As a last resort, they can go to the teacher individually. When some kind of face-saving alternative is provided for dyslexics, the entire group is spared the agonies encountered when 1 or 2 students disrupt the learning atmosphere by clamoring for repeated explanations. Failure to comprehend sequence in instructions is the primary cause for failure with arithmetic story problems, science experiments, and chronological order in social studies. Although outlining is often introduced in elementary grades, the purpose for making brief outlines is frequently not clear to the students. An essential skill for the dyslexic is being able to put down the essential ingredients of a problem step by step. Providing instruction charts or tapes is one way of outlining what the adult expects of the child. Leaving the interpretation of commands up to the student is not fair, unless the teacher has taken great pains to ensure clarity. The overwhelming need of dyslexics is for the adult to leave easily retraceable steps for them to follow. If the handicapped student has easily deciphered cues, he can learn to cope with most classroom expectations. The next section is very important, especially to print-inverted readers or kids who read sideways. The next section is called Correcting Reversals and Rotations. Teaching visual dyslexics not to turn elements upside down or backwards is not always possible in a typical classroom setting. This tendency usually requires a one-to-one teaching relationship which few teachers can provide during the school day. There are certain remedial steps, however, which can be taken regardless of the teacher's time limitations. Remediation must begin with honesty, okay? And this is what I've found with the kids who read upside down. If I'm totally honest with them and just after doing a few preliminary tests with them, I say, you're reading better upside down than you do the regular way. They're very, very acceptive to that idea. In a lot of cases, they already know it. And if I'm willing to accept it, they are certainly willing to accept it, but we'll see. This statement may seem strange to many seasoned educators who are above reproach in their personal ethics. Teachers, however, seldom deal forthrightly with problems involving perceptual impairment. If a student is to find relief from lifelong tendencies toward disability, these must be dealt with openly and forthrightly. This does not mean that an adult would place a student in a position of embarrassment or chagrin before his peers. The approach required for successful remedial work with dyslexics in the classroom is that of informing the student of the kinds of mistakes he tends to make, and then developing a cue system to help him monitor his work against such mistakes in the future. In a quiet conference away from prying eyes and ears of other students, the teacher should explain how the handicapped child's work has been analyzed for dyslexic characteristics. For example, the teacher should present a checklist of visual dyslexic characteristics. And it says to see the end of chapter 2 for that. This tangible list of deficiencies helps her explain in simple terms that the child does not see letters, numerals, or words like most people do. Many professionals recoil from this sort of counseling on the grounds that it is cruel and dangerous to expose a child to himself. The fact is that it is cruel not to explain to the handicapped person exactly what it is that produces conflict in his learning situation. Of course, it would be foolish in most instances to tell the child, "Mike, you are dyslexic." If Mike is mature enough to ask specifically what his problem is, however, he should be told. Half the success of remediating these tendencies depends upon the child's full cooperation. It is impossible to enlist the student's cooperation if he is not informed of the nature of the problem he is supposed to be correcting. If you don't tell a child that in order for them to advance in reading, they have to hold their page differently, how are they ever going to be able to do it? And really, in most cases, all they have to be told is that it's okay for them to turn the page. Most of the time, they've been told over and over again that's wrong. A teacher will readily understand the need for honesty by recalling how she feels when medical doctors withhold information about her own illnesses. Adults are quickly frightened when an examining physician mutters, to himself or aha, but never explains all of this to the apprehensive patient. If teachers can realize that children have the same needs for clarity as adults, it will make remedial work with dyslexics a great deal more effective. Quietly, unemotionally, and forthrightly, the teacher should point to specific examples of dyslexic confusion in the child's work, explaining that these are the reasons for low grades or other forms of failure. The child should be told that he sees some letters backwards or upside down, and the teacher should point out exact instances in his work where he's put BEB for bed or MNST for must. Or she might play part of a tape to let the student hear himself invert whole syllables like grill for girl, on for no. Whatever the dyslexic tendencies are, the teacher must explain them to the student in whatever detail the student wishes. The teacher must not be judgmental or condescending. If the conference can be conducted as a conversation between an interested adult and a child with a need, the result will be relief and a sense of understanding on the child's part. After all, he has known for a long time that something has been wrong. At last, somebody is explaining it all to him. And actually, it's a very simple answer when all they have to do is turn the book. Teachers should allow the dyslexic to suggest ways for correcting the problem, especially in upper grades. Particularly intelligent primary pupils are usually able to have a voice in planning their remedial activities. The teacher must make it clear what her expectations are. This is often done in the form of a simple contract which states the specific dyslexic problems and what the child promises to do each day to overcome them. Sometimes it's just, I promise to read a half an hour in the best way possible for me, whether that be upside down or sideways or whatever. The teacher must make it clear how much time she can give in individual tutoring during the school day. And that's where I used to do it after school, almost every day. If she can manage 3 5-minute periods during recess periods or the lunch hour, this needs to be specified. The important thing is that the student know how much individual attention he can expect. The most promising source of help for one-to-one tutoring during the school day is older students, volunteer teacher aides, or other individuals who can fit quietly into the school routine without disrupting classroom procedures. Older students are especially effective as tutors, provided there is no clash between them and the dyslexic child. And sometimes an older brother or sister or a cousin or mom and dad can do this at home in the same way, as long as they understand that it's okay for the child to do what they're doing and they don't give them any kind of feedback indicating that there's something wrong with what they're doing. A small amount of attention on a one-to-one basis goes a long way in building self-confidence in the dyslexic. Tutoring needs not go on for hours to be effective. In fact, 3 30-minute sessions during the school week are often enough to unlock the perceptual block, and that was about the right time that I found too. Allowing the dyslexic students to make significant progress in overcoming this handicap.